Welcome to this week's episode of the DevOps Lab. I'm April Edwards, and I have Christopher Maneu with me, and we're going to be talking about Infrastructure as Code with NubesGen. And in this series, we're going to cover off tagging strategies. Welcome to this week's episode of the DevOps Lab. This week, I have a returning guest, Christopher Maneu.
Hey, April. How are you doing?
Good. Christopher, so welcome back. I think hopefully everyone's been following along in the series, but go ahead, tell us what you do for Microsoft.
I'm a cloud advocate, and I work on a lot of different topics, and one of them is NubesGen, which is a Infrastructure as Code generator.
Awesome. And this is our fourth episode in this series. And I'm really excited about NubesGen, all the cool stuff it can do. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about tagging strategies. So Chris, tell us about tagging strategies with NubesGen.
Yeah, so tagging strategy is basically a strategy to add tags on Azure resources. This is not a well-known feature on Azure, but basically any resource group or any resource on Azure, you can add a name value collections, what we call tags. And these tags allows you to do a lot of different things, especially on managing all your resources on Azure. And the tagging strategy is basically the rules you put within your organization about which tags should be present on every resources.
Yeah, and I've used tags in the past, and I think we tend to overlook them, especially for building stuff, I would say, by hand from the portal. Being able to do this with infrastructure code is really important, because if we're deploying a lot of stuff in mass or even just quite a few things, it's good to have that tag on. And it could be environment names, it could be for billing strategies, it could be for finding resources. It's great for reporting because tagging pops up, and I see a lot of customers use it when they're, maybe trying to bill by department or maybe know, what environment it's tied to, et cetera. So, no, I think it's great. It is a lot of times, yes, overlooked, but I think with infrastructure code, it's absolutely important and critical especially when you're starting to deploy things more readily and a lot faster.
Yeah, and I can show you on my screen some example where having a tagging strategy in place is really come handy. Mm-hmm. For example, you receive some alert about a failing resource in Azure, or some of your colleagues tell you, hey, you should have a look at this resource. Mm-hmm. This is a name, and you stumble upon this resource. Yeah, it's an app service, but what does it do? What is the application? Who I should contact if there is an issue with this resource? And all of this information can be added as tags. For example, here, I directly know the environment. Oh, okay, that's a dev environment. That's not production. This is regarding this Scuba Sporter application. And the owner is Christopher. So if something happens, like data leak or security issue, I should probably contact Chris to give more info. So tags are very flexible. Like you can put almost anything you want as an name and anything you want as value. Mm-hmm. There is some limitation, but the biggest limitation is you can have up to 50 tags onto one specific resource. So you had a lot of room to add some metadata on top of your resources.
Very cool.
And when you have done that on all your resources, you can do a lot of interesting things. For example, here is a list of my resource groups, and I can directly go here to add filters on the environment and see, for example, all my dev resources. In this case, all my resources, dev resources groups. But I can do much more interesting things. For example, here I am in the cost management tool, and you can see my actual Azure subscription costs, and I can again filter it by a lot of different things, including tags. So I can, for example, try to understand what's the cost of my development environments across all my subscriptions, all my resource groups, and it's under $20 so far, so that should be okay. And I can even create some queries and use these tags within code when I'm automating things. And one thing I've done is I've created a Azure Resource Graph query, which I've pinned onto my dashboard. So here on my dashboard, I can see all my resources and also all my production resources grouped here. So that's a cool, kind of cool things you can do very easily when you have a great tagging strategy in place.
Very cool. And that's super, super important. And that's good to see that NubesGen has that ability built in. So how do we do that from NubesGen from day one?
So what we are doing with NubesGen right now is, if you go on the nubesgen.com website, let me go here, you will not see any options to configure this tagging strategy. What we've done is we take a kind of a low-key approach where basically we are defining for you a very minimum basic strategy, which is the environment, application name, and we're also adding a deployment tool so you can track everything that has been deployed with NubesGen, because probably you will have other tools deploying things onto your subscriptions. But as you can see here in the Bicep generated code, the default tags for all the resources are in your main Bicep file. So it's very easy for you, for example, if you want, one of the things we tend to add in a huge company, in a huge enterprise, is what we call a cost center. So it's basically a code, an internal code for internal invoicing system, so we know which should be paid for this Azure consumption. And let's say that's specific number. So if you want to customize this tagging policy with infrastructure generated by NubesGen, as you can see, you just have one line of code to add, and that's it. This new cost center tag will be deployed on all your resources. So you need to use NubesGen to simplify this, and you need to define a strategy. And for that, we have a lot of different documentation. We will add the links to the description of this video. For example, the workload name, business critical impact, application name, cost center, environment, owner name, etc., etc. There is a lot of things that could become handy at some point in your tagging strategy. We don't enforce things because if you're just a startup, probably these two tags are okay. You don't even need a cost center, but just knowing part of the application that is concerned and the environment, it's okay. Even an owner, because you're maybe a group of 5 or 10 people, so you know who to contact. But if you're in a 100,000 team, then we probably add tags as your Azure infrastructure grows.
No, absolutely. And I think that's so cool that at least, you have a starting point for users to say, right, we know exactly, we've deployed this with NubesGen. Cool. That's a good way to track that. And then we have, other ways to add some basic things like environment, application name, because I think these are things that are nice to have that we always forget, but Infrastructure as Code enables this. So this is awesome to see NubesGen have this kind of out of the box in the code. And then you can kind of build on that, and it gets developers started when they're deploying their Infrastructure as Code.
Yeah, all the idea with NubesGen is to simplify your infrastructure as code creations. So maybe NubesGen will do like 90% of the work, but we have created a path so the minimum are done for you. And if you want to add on top of them, add things on top of that, it's really easy to plug in into what we've generated for you, and to add your own touch on what we generate.
And I think that's so important because customers always ask, where do I get started with Infrastructure as Code, or, what do I get started with? So having that template, having a starting point is fantastic for people to get started with. Christopher, again, thank you. I really appreciate every single episode you've done so far. This has been another great one with tagging strategies. Looking forward to seeing more with what comes out with NubesGen in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher.